Good morning, Suresh. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Good
And
morning. Priya.
morning, and it's very very important because I know the Karaga the 11-day festival has started yesterday, and it's such an important part of Bangalore's heritage, its cultural landscape, and there's no one better to talk about it than you. You're sort of so entrenched in it, and I know this is a subject very close to your heart. So I'm going to go straight into it, Suresh. I know we have very little time, but from Heritage Beku, of which we are all a part, let's step away and let's look at this from a point of view of somebody who has just come into Bangalore. So you see here Karaga, you see images of this, of this flower bedecked gentleman, and you see crowds. What, to the outsider, what is the Karaga festival all about?
See, firstly, the Karaga is a jatra. So it's called Karaga Jatre.
Yeah.
And it starts in the Dharmaraja Swami temple, which is in Thigalas. So this is the origin of the city, this is part of the old city of Bangalore, where the Thigala community, who are basically farmers and gardeners of Bangalore, have settled down for a very, very long time. Long time is there have been many migrations, but they're very specifically pinpoint at Hyder and Tipu Sultan's kind of expansion of the kingdom, where it also was part of Tamil Nadu. So they say that the Thigala community came from the area of Kanjipuram and parts of Velur and all these places, and they're called Vanniyas.
Vanniyas. Yeah.
So the community that came here called themselves Vannikula Kshatriyas.
Okay.
So, and locally they were called Thigalas because there were three sects that were part of the Kshatriya community. Yeah. One is the Vannikula, Shambhukula, and Agnikula.
Okay.
So they all have their own rituals, and the Vannikula Kshatriyas had this temple built for Dharmaraja, that is Yudhishthira of the Mahabharata.
Okay.
And the presiding deity of this is Dharmaraja and Draupadi, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, and the heroes and heroines of Mahabharata. So if there is a presiding deity and why is the Karaga is celebrated, the Karaga bearer, who is supposed to be a man, is actually a personification of Draupadi. And here, Draupadi is just not the heroine of the Mahabharata, but she's also the mother goddess. She's an incarnation of Adi Shakti, which basically means the primordial mother goddess. So,
what is the connection? I mean, here is this wonderful community, with all these origins, and here you have Draupadi and the Mahabharata and Adi Shakti. What's the connection? How did it start? What's the origins?
The origins are very folk in nature, because the Karaga is basically a kind of a decorated pot or a kumbha, which is actually a form of the mother goddess, which is a pot of water, or it might contain something else. So what is inside the Karaga is very secretive. They do not mention it, but technically they're supposed to be a pot. And the shikara kind of form with the Malligehua is part of how the Karaga is decorated. It is carried on the head, and it is it's taken around. So this date is also very important, because this leads to Karaga happens on Chaitra Purnima, which is supposed to be the most auspicious full moon day of the year. So Chaitra as in spring, Purnima as in full moon. So the full moon Chaitra Purnima is supposed to be the most auspicious, and the mother goddess is celebrated. Right. So if you look at the time on the season, it is springtime. And what more can you ask for, especially springtime in Bangalore is most gorgeous. I mean, the plumerias are out, the red gulmahas are out, and all the other flowers which we are all going gaga about, everything is out. So basically you're celebrating nature in another form. The Jatra has more specifications in terms of it is a celebration with this myth associated with Draupadi, etc. And the community has created certain rituals that are very specific, and they're very patriarchal in their way. But what is most interesting is a gender transformation that takes place, which I will talk about later. But first, I'll let you ask more questions about how is it more specific to Bangalore.
Yeah, no, I'm actually fascinated because you talked about a few important things. Like, I'd love to hear more about the gender transformation because that's such an interesting and integral part of this. But in terms of the reason, why Draupadi is so integral to the festival, I was reading somewhere that the community was under siege, and Draupadi, with the turn of the Pallu, here are the warriors that came out, and they saved the community, and then eventually, I mean, this must be folklore, but I found it so fascinating. And the community was so grateful, but yet, and wanted to celebrate, but so sure that they did not want to lose this, that they said, you must come back every year. And this is the form in which Draupadi promises to come back. And this is the gratitude of the community to her for saving them. So I found that fascinating, but perhaps you could shed some light on that. So, the story, yeah.
So many myths surrounding Karaga. One is associated directly with the end of the Mahabharata. And I believe when the war was over, which is quite tragic, they saw Draupadi in her very, almost in a primordial form where she was literally in the battlefield, and she looked like Kali. And I believe the Pandavas got really scared that because she was seen in this particular form, and Krishna, who was on their side, told them that you have to worship her in the form of a pot. So the origins of the pot also is very significant, and I believe then she kind of cools down. This is what I've heard from my ancestors and people who are associated with the Karaga. So there are many of these small myths, and all these culminate into this Karaga bearer, who is actually a very ordinary person, with suddenly gets transformed into this goddess. So he's a man in the morning, and in the night he wears this yellow and red sari. And these kind of transformations are very common in South India, where the men take the form of the goddess. So they invoke the goddess into them, whether it is the Tayyam or whether it is in parts of Tamil Nadu, the Karagattam, it's called Karagattam in Tamil Nadu, or which is Bama Kalapam in Andhra, where the heroine is a man, and Yakshagana obviously has a long tradition of female roles played by male actors. So here it is also quite, it's quite, I mean, it's so easily transformed, like this man becomes a woman, he wears his wife's Mangal Sutra, and he is all goddess, and all these very macho men with swords are following him in the procession, and they are going to protect him, make way for him as he goes through the old Pete area, and he does this long walk, which actually, interestingly, it is supposed to be the first kind of boundary of the city, of the old Pete.
Okay.
So if you want to understand the history of the Pete, I think Karaga is one of the most important ritual jatras that happen, where anybody who is part of that geography, the culture, I want to specifically say cultural geography, it might be the local Marwaris, it might be the local Maratha people, they all wait for the Karaga event, because it's the only it's the only night where they reclaim the city.
Yeah.
And this is also the farming community where reclaims the city, which they've almost lost to the growth of the city. So they say swaths of land which are in and around Kabban Park, Sampangi Ramnagara, Kabbanpete and all that, where land that was acquired by the government for expansion of Bangalore. So it was owned by the larger Thigala community, who basically grew coconuts, ragi, and what have you, fruits and vegetables. And a very interesting thing about it, that they knew the ways of grafting. They knew the way of harvesting water. They knew how to dig tanks and wells. And this specific knowledge of the earth becomes a significant aspect of the emergence of Bangalore as a city from the Kempegowda times. So the Karaga Day is also celebrated as Kempegowda Day.
Okay, okay. Fascinating. But tell me a little bit more about the water part of it. You said that, you know, they knew these kind of tools. This is connected. So help me weave that together.
So there are many communities that are associated with water. I mean, water is fundamental for agriculture. And if these farming communities wanted water, they mostly lived in and around tanks of Bangalore.
Right.
And Sampangi Ramnagar is the major tank in that part of the city. And the Dharmambudi Kere, as in the majestic bus stand, etc., was another larger tank. And there was City Market, which was supposed to be a tank long, long ago. So the Kere and the Tota becomes important. The Kere being these tanks, and the Tota is in the gardens. And the Kote, which is the fort. So Kote, Pete, Kere, Tota become four important tangents for the evolution of Bangalore as a city in general. And maybe Karaga is something that connects the dots. So water, coming back to water, if you look at Cubbon Park, which we love so much, it is originally a farmland that was occupied by the British to expand their larger idea of a Maidan. Now it has become an urban forest, but earlier it was a large Maidan where it started off from the residency and touched towards the Sampangi tank, which supplied water to all parts of central Bangalore, including the Bangalore Club. So this was an important water body. So there's only very little of the water body remaining. So the Karaga takes a ritualistic bath in this kere, which is in Cubbon Park, called Uppuniru Kere, which is called Karaga the Kunte now. So the Kunte is a smaller water body. So the Karaga originates from a water body where the water from this this particular Kunte is seen as sacred. And why not? Without water, we don't exist. So ritually, parts of Cubbon Park, and like there this sudden conversation about the Muneshwara temples in some place like the Bangalore Club. And these were the original ancient landscape of these people because they worshipped Muneshwara. Muneshwara is always seen under the banyan tree. The Devi is seen under these peepal trees. And the cluster of the original native landscape is so much part of the Cubbon Park gate that is closest to the city corporation.
Yes.
So this is the nearest the Karaga comes. And I also heard that the Karaga man does vyayam, as in he does kusti and he builds his body to get strength in the local Garadi Manes. So the Garadi Mane is actually the local gymnasium where they practice kusti, and they have these old equipments for bodybuilding, etc. So it's been a long tradition, and Kabanpet has a lot of these Garadi Manes, and these guys who are part of the Karaga community, the weaving community, the Devangas, the Thigalas, the Marathi-speaking people who have settled down here, the Marwadis. Then also, very importantly, as you wanted to know, how Karaga is syncretic tradition, the Muslim community. If you go to the city market, there are a lot of shops owned by the Muslims, and they are the people who buy and sell fruits and flowers, etc. And there is also the story of Tawakkal Mastan Sahib, which is very significant because there's a dargah in the city area where most of the Hindus go to get taweez made. And this taweez is quite common. They say that the child wakes up in the night, so we have to go to the dargah and get blessed. So women stand out with the children, and the men come out from the mosque after prayers and blow on them because the breath is sacred after the prayer of the evening, etc. So these traditions are very significant considering the climate of our country, where syncretic traditions are not given much importance.
Yeah.
So incidentally, the Karaga visits the Mastan Sahib Dargah in Cottonpet every year, and there is a situation where It is welcomed into the dargah, and I think lemons and fruits are exchanged, and the Veera Kumaras who are there also become part of the scene. So there is a kind of amenity between the two communities, which is, I think, something one has to project uh, in Bangalore, considering that these communities have lived in harmony for many, many years.
It's interesting that this is actually a part of the of the procession, and this has been going on for how many years now, Suresh? How old is this tradition?
I think it's more than 500 years.
And something that is in the heart of the city, and as you said, an interesting kind of a exploration of the origins of the city, the Pete, as it were, and so many other layers. What makes it so, such a hub in Bangalore? The Karaga festival, of course, we did have this hiatus during COVID, and very rightly so, because it was definitely a potential super spreader. But last year's when the Karaga festival sort of was revived, and it was such a joy to most of us. But what is this excitement about when you see hordes of people? What is going on when, if you look at the next 10 days, tell us about the procession and what it is about, what people are doing there. And also maybe another question on, what is the build-up for the next 10 days of the Karaga?
So there are certain rituals that are organized in the temple, but there are three important days. One is the Arati, where the women come out.
Yeah.
And the women come out with pots on their head with the diyas in it and decorated with jasmine flowers, and also local flowers which might not be native, like the gulmohar. The gulmohar flowers sticking out of these deepotsava. They call it deepotsava. And I've seen them, and there are all these women gymnasts who are doing are taking sticks and doing gymnasts on the street, and their bands, etc. They go around the Pete area. So one day it's called the Deepotsava. Another day it is called the Hasi Karaga, or the one day before the main Karaga. Then there is also the main Karaga, that Karaga Jatre, and there's a lot of many small temples in around the Pete area where they come out with their rathas or the chariots. And as you know, Bangalore is got a constellation of goddesses. So the goddess of Bangalore is called Annamma, again, which is there in the Gandhinagar area. So Annamma Devi is very prominent. She also is very close to the Dharmambudhi Kere. And she also goes off in different chariots to meet her sisters. So there are many other goddesses. There's Yellamma, there's Gangamma, there is Patalamma, etc., Mutyalamma. So all of them come out in the chariot. So this is supposed to be a celebration of the many avatars of the goddess. Oh. So, and Karaga becomes one of the important tangent points for the rathas to come out from the temples into the streets. And for people, I think it's a big festival that they are Marwadis of the community making large pots of vegetable bath or pongal and serving to everybody. So it's everybody's festival. It's not only, doesn't become only a community festival, it becomes a city festival. And this is important to understand, that there is a harmony in the city. It's connected with the water and the environment. It's connected to the garden, the tota, and it's connected to all communities in different forms. So it's almost like a public holiday. And when we call it Jatra, because many people who are very poor vendors, who are vending things on the streets, drawing tattoos, selling balloons, or selling sweets and kadla-puri and whatnot, they're out on the streets, and they know that this is the time the Karaga happens. So it is a time to make a little bit of money. It's time to celebrate. It's a time to, it's ritualistic and also has a religious connotation, but it's also for people to meet each other, you meet and meet your neighbors, you come out, you go on to somebody's terrace, you don't know who they are. Can I see Karaga Nodboda now? They say, and the person invites you home and gives you lemonade and whatnot. And I've gone on sat on terraces when I was a kid to see Karaga. And I don't know who they were. Some of them are my relatives, some of them are, considering that I come from the Thigala community myself. And there were a time where my mother, who uh, went and met all her relatives in the Pete area, relatives and old friends and people. So it is a socializing time also for people.
Yeah.
And you come out in all your finery and you are invited to different homes, and everybody is waiting for the most climatic moment, the Karaga coming out of the Dharmaraja temple. It starts dancing and people start throwing flowers over it. People are waiting patiently outside their doorstep with this aarti. The Karaga comes to their lane and the people do aarti to this person who they think is the mother goddess, but he's a man who might be dressed in a trouser and shirt the next day and be walking the streets and going to his job in some factory or IT company. But for that day, human becomes divine.
Wonderful.
Man becomes woman. So this transformation is something I find very, very magical and very kind of embracing. Like this gender transformation is not talked about. I mean, they believe that this goddess is beyond gender. She created everything. So we celebrate her, and that is the kind of pulse, the very electric feeling that is there. No pictures can do justice to it. So I think being there uh, and experiencing it live is what is it all about. Many people ask me and say that where can we see the Karaga? The Karaga is not static.
Yes.
It's always moving. So you have to go to certain spots where you can really find it, and only local knowledge can give you these spots where the Karaga is going to stop or pause, or somebody offers a prayer or a arti in their house, and there are these local Marwadi communities that plaster the road with flowers. So the Karaga walks on a bed of flowers. Obviously, the Karaga is going to stop in this lane because the people there are celebrating the mother goddess. And this is how you see it in the larger context of the city, of its geography. And it's a very Pete oriented um, kind of festival, and it belongs there, and that is how it is.
That's how it's originated, and that's how it's sort of carried on, and it's also a reclamation in some ways, because some part the city seems to be sort of going outwards. You have the new city, you have Central District, you have the white fields, but the core, I mean, as you said, that is something which we need to go back to. I love the fact that there was a terrace that you would go up to and get the best view, and perhaps this year you and I should make a date and figure out whose balcony we can sort of get, just sort of barge into and have a glimpse at this beautiful thing. Over the years, as a person who has seen this and tried to understand, there's a certain sense of vibrancy and a certain sense of power and collective sort of participation and joy. But you have to sort of, as you rightly said, be there to be able to get it. If again you were talking to somebody who was just one second, sorry, just give me a second. Suresh, also walk us through what actually happens through the.
See, there's a lot of waiting that happens.
Yeah.
And one of the important things is that the Karaga comes out at post midnight.
Yeah.
It has to go back before the sun rises. So that is the norm. So it is something that happens in the night. So you have the full moon and full blast. The Karaga starts off getting dressed in a closed enclosure of the Garbhagriha of the temple. Nobody is allowed inside except a selected few who arrange the Karaga. The Karaga walks out of the temple, and there's a huge noise that they even, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they are like gunshots in the air. So you have this big blast that keeps happening, and suddenly everybody knows the Karaga is out, and the Karaga defines a particular area and a space where it starts moving in these localities, and they start figuring out. Sometimes it's very spontaneous, but sometimes it's also very planned, because it has to go to many temples which are there in the Pete area. So in this area and the location, there's a lot of people who are waiting for the Karaga to come, and there are certain pakka routes, and sometimes the Karaga just dashes off and starts dancing in the middle of a square. So it's also planned and spontaneous.
But it must cover, the temples that it must cover are ordained. Those are on the path.
Yeah, yeah. The main temples main temples that are part of the itinerary for the Karaga.
Got it. Got it. I'll just. So the path is ordained, as you rightly said, but on what basis is the person chosen, Suresh?
That's a very, very important and crucial question, because sometimes it is hereditary.
Yeah.
From the particular family that carries the Karaga. But sometimes people are trained to carry the Karaga, which means that they have to be physically and spiritually ready to carry the Karaga. They should have some kind of a practice and initiation. So there is a panchayat of the community that gathers and selects people. Always there are two people who are selected. Like one is always there as a standby, but the main guy is the person who is the chosen one. It's not only for his physical attributes and strength, it's also his ability to kind of carry the goddess. How does he invoke the goddess in his through his spiritual practice? So, like the Tayam, like in the Tayam, that you evoke a particular goddess like Bhadrakali or anything, that he has to have the energy and the spiritual sensibility to evoke the goddess in him. Because the belief is that all human beings are made up of male and female. So this is to trigger off the female energy in you. And if you are able to do that, the female energy is called Shakti, and you are able to carry the Karaga. So it's a very spiritual kind of evolution that happens, which is not seen outwardly, but it is an inner spiritual growth. And you get trained to start possessing the goddess. So you and me can't possess the goddess because we are not trained to do it. And it involves a lot of practice. But the Karaga bearer has the capacity and the ability to possess the goddess. So he's almost in a trance. This is very important. So the Karaga is not a cosmetic thing of wearing a costume and going around. It is a very spiritual, a deep spiritual practice that is has to be inculcated. The man has to go through a lot of physical and spiritual and religious things that make him pure. He is separated from his wife. So he stays in the temple for 10 days. And he can't eat non-vegetarian food. He becomes pure vegetarian. He only eats certain kinds of food that give him this energy. So these are the ways that this comes into being.
So the choice is from the panchayat, who evolves every year. Has there been any interesting insight into the Karaga bearers so far? I mean, have you met them off?
So there is a day, there is a day on after the Karaga where the Karaga bearer sits in a chair and people can go meet him.
Okay.
And he offers you a lemon, which is supposed to be an embodiment of energy. And this is everybody goes and does namaste to him or congratulates him or something like that. And a particular festival called Holi is celebrated in the temple premises with turmeric water, only turmeric water. Okay. And it's called Vasantotsava.
Vasantotsava.
I remember very well Vasantotsava because when I was a kid, I was taken by my cousins and drowned into a huge drum of turmeric water. So I remember this very well.
So yellow, dirty fellow at that time, I guess.
I look like a tabubia flower.
Very topical right now. And so these are
Silence.
any other memories, Suresh, because have you attended everyone that you remember? Obviously, you've been traveling, so there would have been breaks. But
so even when I don't want to attend, there are friends that think that I'm an expert in knowing all the gullies of the Pete area, and so sometimes instead of waking up the whole night, we go early in the morning at 5 o'clock and almost intercept the Karaga in its way. So we do the smart thing by waking up at 5 in the morning and intercept the Karaga through our kind of innate knowledge of asking people that which route has it taken. So one has to be very intuitive to figure out where it's going to come out and where it's going to go because it has to return to the temple. So you have to intercept the Karaga, or you are waiting for the Karaga, or the Karaga intercepts you. It's just sheer luck.
So you're the man. You're the one that we really need to sort of keep in touch with.
There are many people, but it's very difficult for me to conduct this tour because it's a moving festival. It's a festival that you don't stand still because you need to go out there and be part of that buzz.
For somebody from the outside, somebody who has not been in Bangalore for a long time, how does one plug in? What is it that would for somebody, say, from another part of from the world or another part of the country, what is the essential magic that you feel that must actually be plugged into?
I personally feel that it is not easy to plug into something like this, which is very local, but efforts are made by many people to become part of this festival. And this festival is not an easy thing to enter because it's not very touristic. And that becomes not so easy for everybody. So one has to read up, one needs to know the cultural context. One also needs to know local people who are very happy to speak about it. It'll be interesting to go meet the Thigala community in Thigalas and say, this is what I'd like to know. And they'll be very happy and willing. I think they're very generous to outsiders and they'll happily invite you home and they'll tell you more about what they know firsthand about the Karaga festival. I'm just somebody who is on the periphery who has the interest in the urban Bangalore, the festivities, etc. But this is another story when it comes from somebody who is practicing. I'm not a religious and practicing Hindu, as you know, but I think it'll be nice to hear from ground zero. And that is an opportunity that people should take and go to the Pete and start talking to people and tell them that, please tell me more about the Karaga, what you're doing, why are you dressed the way you are, and where does the Karaga coming and where is it going? Can I see the Karaga? I think that brings you a lot of joy. It's a part of discovering the heart of the city. And I think that the Karaga is like the heartbeat of the city.
I think, Suresh, you put your finger on it because, I think we all skate a lot on the surface and we can't be blamed for that because at the end of it, we all have our lives, we go on. But sometimes to do a deep dive, it's festivals like this that sort of, instantly sort of throw open the covers of what the pulse, the beat of the old city and the origins are. And that level of connection and that level of depth makes and transforms your view of the city completely. And that's what I'm hoping that, of course, the government, as you said, has been very supportive, but, getting more interactions or at least having insights into this or creating, look-ins, as it were, would be really great. If, I also wanted to check, you've talked about the origins, the traditions, the folklore, the physicality of it, the geocultural kind of base. You also talked about how the person is chosen, the path that is taken. But at the end of it, it is just this 11-day, pulsating festival that all of Bangalore looks forward to and wants to engage in. If if you had to sort of take it a step higher about how it defines Bangalore, what would you say about that?
I mean, it defines Bangalore in its core folk tradition of Karaga being part of the cultural geography of the origin of the city. And it is connected with the lakes and tanks, the gardens, and the people who were original inhabitants of the city. So it is like something that is very authentic, local, native. And things have changed dramatically. There's been an influx of migrants from different parts of India and the world. And I think the Karaga festival has absorbed all of them somehow. It's got the capacity to just say, okay, come in, we participate in it. It's beyond religion, it's beyond communities, it's beyond language. So here we are celebrating in whichever way you want to, like there is no specific rule. You don't have to go there wearing a namam and whatever, lungi or dhoti or whatever. You could just walk in there and just blend in the crowd. I think that is the energy of this festival, where it just like a sponge, it just absorbs everybody in. It's very, very secular. I want to see more festivals where Hindus and Muslims come together. And I think this is very important for a very secular community to grow, live together, and live in a peaceful way. And I think it represents the kind of generosity and openness where we say, okay, Solpa, just Madi, the man is stamping on your feet to see the Karaga, but you let him do because the Karaga is just passing by. And it is the essence of the city where we are open and we embrace everything. And Karaga also is so much part of this openness and this celebrating diversity.
So it's that's why I titled it Heritage, Harmony, and H2O, because harmony, because of the fact that it's just been very casually and very matter-of-factly celebrating a secular, diverse kind of a setup, and water because H2O, because it's been such a core part, of the festival, and the Karaga itself, the whole magic formula of what really is inside, is such a, I think it's so core to this. But what I also see, and I respond to, Suresh, is when you say that it's very flexible, it's kind of evolved, it embraces, you can sort of step in and step out. I also see that a lot of changes have been incorporated. For example, many of the temples have the Kantirva Stadium, or the lake there itself has been the biggest casualty, as it were, because what's left is just a small little token, lake which
Sampangi Ramanagara Kere.
Sampangi Ramnagar Kere is, and I've seen it. I look at the stadium, I just imagine what it was and where it is now. A couple of the temples itself have been absorbed. As you said, the majestic bus stand was also a lake. So those are the more, the sadder kind of departures from the original Karaga, but again have been incorporated. But is there a message that while this happens, we have to recommit to the very critical issue of preserving our keres and preserving our water bodies for the future, because this is such a critical part of our life, our world, and our continuance.
Coming from the water perspective, if there is no water, there is no Karaga.
Yeah.
Water is so significant to us, whether it's an open well, brimming with water where people come and fetch water, whether it's a small tanks, or whether it's percolation of water that becomes these small tanks and carries, and they're interlinked through the Raja Kaluways. I feel Karaga can be associated environmentally to sustain the water bodies of the city, to make sure that they are flowing well from one to another, to understand that we need groundwater for the keres and other tanks to fill up. If this doesn't exist, I don't think there will be a future for the city without water. So I also want to tell you that in this whole process, we need to understand that Karaga does not just happen in Thigalas. It happens in other places. like Varkla or Shantinagar or somewhere in Alsur. So there are many smaller karakas that happen. So one needs to understand that it is a festival that is happening at different parts of Bangalore also. Although the original main karaka happens in the Thigalas. So it is a festival that emerges at different times, but mostly on a full moon night in different areas, but also constantly connected with different water bodies.
And to put a context, I mean, if you look at the new, the focus on trying to connect all the Rajagopal together, which is a project that Naresh has been working on and a few others have been very focused on, that's a great thing if it actually happens, because it not only is great for the city, but also from the point of view of tradition. This is how the city was originally designed. And last word to you. I know that we've kind of overrun time, Suresh, and you breathe, live, and been really part of this in a very matter-of-fact way, and you love this with all your heart. And I know that for us to be able to sort of, to kind of plug in, I used that word before, in understanding this, it cannot be done unless you experience it. But any last words from you, from the heritage perspective, and how proud we are from Bangalore, to have something like this to celebrate?
This is a living tradition and a heritage, and it's also something that is beyond language, religion, and it brings everybody together. I think this particular heritage of Karaga Jatre has to be celebrated, and maybe it's easy to plug in. I told you, just go walk into Thigalas or the central part of the city and just melt into the crowd. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy it.
Look forward to that. This year it's a date, and as I said, someday maybe the balcony and the lemonade and you, Suresh, for the Karaga festival this year. So let's all enjoy. We've got the next 10 days while it slowly builds up, and I hope we have another conversation about that very soon. But Suresh, thank you so much for your insights, for your very deep knowledge of the space and your love and embracing of something that's so critical and so central to Bangalore. So we should all be very proud of being there and having this to look forward to, and also grateful that post-COVID now we actually can be part of something like this again. So thanks very much, Suresh, for all the time.
Welcome. Go out there and enjoy the Karaga festival.
That's it. That's what we need to do. All the best, and look forward to the people enjoying the Karaga in the future.
Welcome.
Thanks, Suresh, again.